Thanks for tuning in. I'm Scott Walter.
And I'm Michael Watson.
After a big June of victories for the First Amendment at the Supreme Court that now has a freshly open seat on its bench, we are joined by Lori Windham, senior counsel at Becket Law, to go behind the High Court's famous red curtain and discuss just how these crucial cases are argued. This is the InfluenceWatch podcast. In the Supreme Court term that closed last month, First Amendment free speech protections won 3 major victories against efforts by so-called progressives to compel dissenters to mouth agreement with or to fund support for the left's values. Those 3 victories provoked the New York Times to complain in a front-page article that pretended not to be an editorial that conservatives were, quote, weaponizing free speech. 2 of the cases, the masterpiece Cakeshop dispute over a wedding cake, which we discussed a couple of episodes ago, and NIF Lavie Becerra, which challenged a California law that all but required pro-life pregnancy centers to advertise for state-funded abortions, dealt directly with religious freedom. And so we're happy to welcome Lori Windham, senior counsel of Becket Law, also known as the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, which filed friend of the court briefs in both those cases. She'll help us discuss the Supreme Court's decisions and how influencers like Becket organize to win big decisions like these. Okay, so Lori, the first thing I should say is disclosure that years ago I worked alongside you at Becket. Yes. I also want to point out that you're a Harvard Law School grad and that in your career you have defended a very wide array of different religions, correct? I mean, Becket is not simply a defender of Christians in the courts, is it?
That's exactly right. We like to say that we defend everyone from A to Z Anglicans to Zoroastrians, and there's an important reason for that. We believe that religious freedom is not something that just belongs to you or to me or someone who believes like us. Religious freedom is a fundamental human right, and it's something that must be defended for all faiths. And so that is what we aim to do at Becket, and that is what we have done at Becket.
Another thing that is distinctive about Becket is that while many firms that are similar get into other areas besides religious liberty, Becket stays laser-focused just on religious liberty. Isn't that correct?
That's exactly right. And Becket is small by design. We want to be the people who can go in and find the right case in the right place and take that and set a good precedent. And so our job is not to try and cover the whole panoply of cases out there, because you'll tire yourself out really quickly doing that. There are a lot of interesting issues, but to focus on one thing, which is religious freedom, to know the law of religious freedom and to do that really well. And so if we are to divide our focus and do other things, we'll be less effective. And I think our effectiveness speaks for itself. We are 5-0 at the Supreme Court and hope to keep that record running.
Yeah, batting 1,000 at the Supremes is not bad. Well, Mike, why don't you get our discussion started with a recap of some of these decisions?
So the first one, the first case that was decided, Scott, you and I discussed a couple weeks ago, and that was Masterpiece Cakeshop v. Colorado Civil Rights Commission. And the question that was posed in that case effectively was, can a religious Christian baker be compelled by state non-discrimination law to make a custom cake celebrating a same-sex wedding? And the court ruled by 7-2 that they aren't really sure, but man, the Colorado Civil Rights Commission was really mean to religious people, and therefore the baker must be allowed not to be punished.
Yes, and as I recall, Lori, the baker made it clear that he wasn't saying there were classes of people he would refuse to do business with. He was only saying that there was a particular ceremony that he wouldn't bake for. Am I right? That's
exactly right, and that's where religious freedom arguments really come into this, is he was saying, hey, look, if you want to come into my shop and just buy a cake off the shelf, here are all the cakes. I'll happily sell you one. It's just that I can't participate in and celebrate a religious ceremony that is contrary to my beliefs. And we have a long history in America, and this was recognized in the 7-2 opinion in this case, that we don't coerce people to participate in religious ceremonies they disagree with. The majority opinion talked about the fact that clergy can't be coerced into officiating at a wedding at which it would be contrary to their religious beliefs. And it's interesting to note that when clergy are doing that, they're also doing that on behalf of the state. They are actually participating and signing the marriage license for that couple. But even in that role, they don't forfeit their religious freedom, and they can continue to follow their religious beliefs. The same should be true of a baker who's just trying to live out his faith.
Now, Mike, the next case we want to talk about is the NIF Lavie Becerra case. Tell us the background.
So like Masterpiece Cakeshop, this was also a compelled speech contrary to your religious beliefs situation. What California did was they passed a law that, to put it simply, basically compelled pro-life groups that operate crisis pregnancy centers to advertise for this state's publicly funded abortions. Needless to say, when you are a pro-life institution,